Ladies and gentlemen, time has arrived. Here is my last 2024 election official forecast, covering every single state. First, filling this out from the western side of the United States to the eastern side, I will be leaving the swing states blank. We will then be examining the key swing states. Clearly, regarding the election, there are many clearly defined states. I will offer my opinion on some possible margins in these states. I will begin with Washington. At least Kamala Harris will be winning Washington rather effortlessly, probably by around 14 or 15 points. Kamala Harris will most likely be winning Oregon, maybe with a little less margin, maybe 9-10 points, somewhere around there. Polls taken in Oregon have not been plentiful. Clearly, California will go to Kamala Harris. Still, I believe it will be by not much less than 2020. Biden won it by 27. Harris winning it will probably be around 20 or 21, maybe a 22, 23. I'll mark Nevada as empty. Clearly, we will be traveling to Idaho. Donald Trump will win Idaho rather easily. Trump will win Montana rather effortlessly. The Senate race makes Montana relevant, and Trump is expected to win it by a margin larger than his 2021. He won't be able to lose if he scores 18 or 19 points. Donald Trump will win quite effortlessly in Wyoming. Donald Trump will find North Dakota rather easy. Donald Trump will easily win South Dakota. You have Nebraska, the 3rd district at Nebraska at large, the 1st district. I'm going to blank the 2nd district. I suppose I should mention the swing state or swing district right now. Kansas will be heading to Donald Trump. Out of Kansas, there was a rather fascinating poll with Trump only up by 5. And there's the story that Kansas is becoming more liberal, but Trump's going to prevail anyway. And I believe it will be more than 5 as well. Donald Trump will be Oklahoma's choice. Texas is going to Donald Trump. Quite large state liberals are. They have been attempting to flip it, but Trump seems to be widening the margin he gained in 2020, that which he won by roughly 5.8. Given the liberal migration to Texas from costly states like California and New York, it looks like he might win by roughly 7 or 8, which is significant. Clearly, Alaska will be going to Trump. We will now find the margin. Perhaps 8 or 9, the margin could be shockingly close. I suppose 2020's score was 10. Perhaps it will get overdone out to 12 or 13. Who knows? Hawaii will be heading to Kamala. She will also be heading to Colorado. Regarding Colorado, it resembled almost a swing state in 2016. There have been a lot of liberals arriving in the state. For Harris, I estimate a minimum 12 or 13-point win. Utah will be going to Donald Trump, to be honest. We shall leave New Mexico empty. Donald Trump went to that state on Halloween. One could find some possible wiggle room there. I'm going to grow and give more of a thorough consideration on that. In terms of it, Trump will easily win Louisiana. Trump's going to find Arkansas quite easy. Donald Trump will easily win Mississippi. Missouri, I suppose the Senate race is rather competitive. Holly ought to win rather easily. Trump is destined to prevail. Donald Trump should win Iowa by at least 8 or 9 points, I would say. We will be leaving Minnesota blank. We will mark Wisconsin as blank. We do have Illinois, and Kamala Harris might win there maybe by 11 or 12. Though it would be a tighter margin, I would say perhaps somewhat more than that. Then it wasn't 2020, much as many of these liberal states will find in 2024. This is why the popular vote could start to change to Donald Trump. And in terms of that as well, Kentucky is essentially exactly. Donald Trump will quite naturally be in this state. Trump will win Tennessee without much effort. Trump will win Alabama with little effort. Yet another state is Florida. 2020 was a swing state. It is not Donald Trump now, the obvious preferred in Florida. What will the margin be is the only query left. I figure it's at least 8 or 9 points. You consider the early voting trends. Looking at the voter registration, with Republicans having roughly a 7 to an 8-point advantage in the independents, as we observed in 2016 and 2020, heading for Trump in the state of Florida looks to be. Trump most likely wins the state by a notable margin. Many others still believe it will be rather close. Most certainly it will not be. Recently, there has also been a polling shift whereby Trump is rising as even more preferred. Furthermore, I doubt they are dragging the state in terms of their sample technique. Though polls already indicate he will win by roughly 7.5 to 8 points, I believe Trump will surpass the polls. He will most likely come out on top by around 10 or 11. We are going to blank Georgia. We do have South Carolina headed for Donald Trump. We will be blanking North Carolina and Virginia when we depart. We do have Trump's West Virginia under control. Ohio is under travel to Trump. I came upon an interesting poll. Stories of an Ohio Trump +3 abound. It is completely absurd. Donald Trump scored 8 points to win Ohio in an environment far worse in 2020. In terms of, perhaps there are states that swing to the left, but Trump going from +8 to +3 in 2024 in a far better environment, more favorable conditions for him. It's not apples to apples, simply ridiculous. He has scored roughly 67 points on most of the Ohio polls. With a larger margin than he did in 2016 or 2020, maybe by around 9 to 9.5 points, he will end up winning Ohio, so benefiting the Senate race with Bernie Moreno. Indiana is heading to Donald Trump indeed. Usually among the first states to be called blank, from Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, blank is Indiana. You do have New York, a state some Republicans have discussed perhaps. You know, this is a swing state that could have possibly occurred. Not going to happen, is it? Harris's New York victory will probably be around a 13.1. That is a notable cut. Though it's not a Trump victory, Biden prevailed by 23 and goes down to 13. And I doubt it will fall inside single-digit range. Then turning now to New Hampshire. Another state is that, which is that. Right now I will leave blank. It sort of became a swing state. You do have Vermont, clearly headed to Kamala Harris, Connecticut, New Jersey, maybe under 10. Though it will be drastically cut, Biden won it around 20 years ago. Two states are New Jersey and New York. Though it is something if you are the Republicans considering how many times you have lost it, you would want to get that since Trump's going to make a significant ground on the popular vote after it matters a lot. Along with Massachusetts, all very clear states Kamala Harris will win. You also have Delaware, Maryland, D.C., Rhode Island, and talking about Maine, the Maine at large, is fascinating. I would wish to discuss it. You can argue as a swing state, but is it not what I believe? Simply put, polling is not conducted in Maine, or is rather rare. Some quite fascinating polling was done. Though it was essentially a student poll, in the past 2 cycles it was quite accurate. And Trump was up by 8. I'm not stating Trump's going to win Maine at large by 8. He lost this in 2020, but given Maine's very low general poll count, I believe it's most likely closer than most people would think. Regarding the 1st district, Kamala Harris is locked in there. Regarding the 2nd district, Trump will most certainly rule there. Though that's quite likely how those electoral votes wind up being split, the 1st district is more of a lock for Harris than the 2nd district is for Trump. I will also vote in the 2nd district of Nebraska, the other electoral vote. Unbelievably, it is most likely going to Kamala Harris, maybe by 7 or 8 points. That is the Omaha region. It is just a minor populated area. Clearly, given it's only one district, and Harris, population-wise, the district swung more left. She will win that, or I would expect her to win that, but right now we will go through all the swing states. We're going to go here and offer my official prediction. Some of these are fringe, some of these are real swing states. Regarding Nevada, I believe Donald Trump will very barely prevail, maybe by less than a point. Based on polling, Donald Trump, based on even a recent history, we saw Republicans make ground in 2020, only lose by 2.5. And we saw rather good polls in terms of their accuracy in 2021. It could be the closest major swing state out of the 7 that the media talks about. The polls now indicate Donald Trump's up by about 1. Polls like the Atlas one showing Trump's up by 4 have shown Nevada seems to be going toward Trump. Early voting in Clark County was rather high. Republicans keep those good early vote totals, since they have gained advantage going into Election Day. Trump narrowly wins Nevada, in my opinion. Just 6 electoral votes total here. Out of the 7 major swing states, it would be the least significant. Yet, I believe Donald Trump wins that state. It will be quite near. One you could argue is this one. Right now it is about 50-50. While some of them are 50-50, Nevada is difficult to get a complete picture on. I am handing it to Donald Trump. Turning now to Arizona, that state is another one Donald Trump should win by somewhat more margin than Nevada. Regarding the Senate, I'm considering 3.5 points, which might help Kari Lake win by perhaps 0.5 point, but Donald Trump is up in all the polls regarding Arizona. Right now, he's that preferred. For 2 months now, I would say, he has been the favorite. Liberals seem to have given up Arizona within the past month and a half, and Donald Trump most certainly will inherit that state. You go over the Arizona polls, they underachieved Trump. They underpulled Trump back in 2020, rather modestly in my opinion. Now, Trump is up in practically all of them. He is around 1.5. Arizona will be heading to Trump, I believe. With their emphasis on perhaps a North Carolina along with the Rust Belt, the Harris campaign seems to have given up Arizona, and to some degree, Nevada. Donald Trump finishes up winning Arizona, in my opinion. Now, in terms of New Mexico, that is a state I believe Kamala Harris is capable of clinging to, maybe by 4 or 5 points. I do believe it could be closer than most would have guessed. The state is a border one. Trump will excel, in my opinion. Trump holding the gathering on Halloween there will somewhat help. Halloween is a holiday. Still, I doubt it will be sufficient to cover the difference overall. And you certainly have some worried people. Why is one visiting New Mexico? Go there, especially on purpose. It does not really make sense. Their internal polls have to be far better. I spotted Harris +5, Rasmussen. I have other New Mexico polls here. For Kamala, there all have been 5 or 6 point leads. Regarding that, I believe she ends up carrying the state. I simply cannot do it. Regarding Minnesota, Minnesota could be a shockingly close state. Kamala Harris ends up hanging on to Minnesota. Presumably by around 4 points would be my estimate, maybe 5 points. This is a state that will definitely get closer. It was a swing state once again in 2016. That was a 1-point variation. To be honest, should it go to Trump, it wouldn't totally surprise me. It is among those extra swing states. Although Virginia, Minnesota, and New Hampshire seem to be the extra swing states, I do believe Kamala Harris can hold on to Minnesota and win perhaps by a 3 or a 4-point margin. Now, considering Georgia, this is yet another state I believe Donald Trump wins. Though I would want to say comfortably, I believe the victory there will be roughly 3.5 to 4-point range. Out of Georgia, we have rather accurate polls. In past 2 Trump cycles, the Georgia polls have been accurate. Moreover, Trump is seated right around +3 in terms of the overall. Right now, Trump looks really good in Georgia and Arizona. Losing either of them would be quite unexpected at this point. Though it's mostly based on the Rust Belt, we're not discussing her sweeping the Rust Belt, or maybe North Carolina, nor about him being a greater narrative. Looking at North Carolina, another state I believe Donald Trump would win, is especially in 2020, Donald Trump won the state under far more difficult circumstances than in 2016. He secured it just by 1.3. It approached closer. 2 points close. 2 points closer than in 2016, and they will debate this as well. It moved in proximity. Why couldn't it flip right now? And when you discuss the migration into the state from the more expensive states people are leaving from, like in New York down to North Carolina, I do believe the state is becoming somewhat more liberal. But given his popularity rising over the past 4 years, I believe Trump will be able to seize that. Looking at Trump's approval rating and what people believe it to be now, based on the 4 years he spent in office, one is quite nostalgic for him. Furthermore, even if perhaps more liberals now live in the state over the past 4 years, I believe that if Trump wins this state in 2016 and 2020, it will not be sufficient to offset his growing popularity after already winning the state by 2 points. It will most likely be a 2.5 to a 3-point win. He won it 3 points back in 2016. He gained 1 point in 2020. From North Carolina, I believe it returns to roughly 2.5-point triumph for Donald Trump. Donald Trump would thus come to be at 268. And at this moment, that is the whole liberal case. And this is, I believe, Harris's road of choice. We will be looking at Virginia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania would be among others. And concerning Virginia, I simply cannot do it. I really can't. It will be quite close, I believe. People largely expect it to be rather close. Now, some people believe it will be 5 or 6 points. Based on Virginia, I believe it could be 3.5 to 4 in Minnesota. Those are sort of the 2 states where past history would say Minnesota is more conservative. But you have the Junkin factor in 2021, and he is visiting Virginia rather than Minnesota. That would thus indicate that the Trump campaign clearly believes their polls in Virginia are more favorable than those in Minnesota. Virginia, he is therefore having a rally there today. It's going to be rather near. Trump may be able to overcome losing the state by whatever it was, 8 or 9 points. though I'm not sure. Though it's a lot to make up in Virginia, it will be quite close. And there will be much discussion on it becoming a swing state maybe in 2028. In 2016, it was rather quite close. Biden widened the lead greatly, and I believe it will be quite close once more. But I cannot now forecast it for Trump, even if it wouldn't be shocking at all if Trump prevailed. By 11 or 12 o'clock at night, if Trump won this state, or we were getting rather good numbers, you're talking about a very simple Trump victory. Regarding that, Virginia is going to show a lot of indicators. Proceeding now to New Hampshire, another state right now is I just cannot do it. I have to hand it to Harris. It is going to be rather close. Though New Hampshire boasts a lot of freedom, I believe Harris extremely limits the state, possibly by just 2 or 3 points. Perhaps it's even closer, but I do believe that many of those who possess freedom have a slight left-leaning. Given the polls, it's shocking that Trump did not visit New Hampshire, especially in light of New Mexico. Really, the electoral vote difference between New Hampshire and New Mexico is just 1. Though we only have public polls, you would think New Hampshire the polls are 3 or 4 points better than New Mexico. The internals are absent from us. Perhaps then the internals in New Hampshire are far worse than public polling. Recently, a few polls have come rather near. One poll had Trump up by around half a point. Though you have a Rasmussen-Harris +1, it was not included into the actual clear political aggregate. You scored another 3 Harris plus. These fall right on the margin. One could say that is feasible. I'm staring at Virginia and New Hampshire. Those would be the 2 states where, should Trump be successful in winning them, you would not require any of the others. Right now, Trump is at 268. Nebraska's winner-take-all was hotly debated for this reason as well. Obviously then, it's just 5 electoral votes. Trump would be at 269 and has assured Nebraska at large of victory. Trump is thus trying to expand that map, maybe take Virginia to where you are at the margin already without any of the other belt states. At least he would tie. Regarding the rest belt, I have seen a lot of people divide it lately. Michigan is heading one direction. They have Wisconsin and Pennsylvania going the other way, or Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin and Michigan going one way, and Pennsylvania heading the other way. Regarding Pennsylvania, most people believe that with these 3 rest belt states, they will all be quite near in terms of the margin, albeit by a very small margin. Out of the 3, Pennsylvania is regarded to being the most Republican. Thus, and that's not a guarantee by the manner, many have expressed perhaps Pennsylvania goes left, Wisconsin goes right. Regarding all the polls, however, based on past election data, we believe Pennsylvania will very gently lean toward Donald Trump. And I believe Pennsylvania will be the state. Among those 3 states is what I mean. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia are it. We could address Virginia. We can discuss some of the other states in the Sun Belt and Nevada and Arizona. But those 3 states, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, rule here. 2 months ago I mentioned this. Donald Trump's 3 states of choice will be those 3 that will prevail in this contest. And with all the effort Pennsylvanian people have put into it, this truly is more like a storybook ending. Donald Trump almost gets killed in Pennsylvania. Most likely he ought to have. He barely turned his head, thus the only reason he's alive. He returns to PA and Butler in a rural area, draws over 100,000 and brings Elon Musk there. One of the most epic events we have seen on a campaign trail truly ever in American history. And how about that being the state Donald Trump clinches it on? That is, given this cycle, that would truly be a storybook ending. And I do believe Donald Trump will emerge in that condition, and I suppose some people will find it shocking as well. Regarding a Trump win, I believe it will be roughly 2, maybe more than 2 points. Currently leading the polls in Pennsylvania is Trump. We now might see some more updates. He might wind up going somewhat down, but right now I believe he is up by 0.3 or 0.4. And when it comes to Wisconsin and Michigan, I do believe Pennsylvania is the one pushing Donald Trump over. Wisconsin is, I would say, more conservative than Michigan. That is, I believe, a rather common belief that is neither weird or anything else like that. Donald Trump will certainly also seize Wisconsin, in my opinion. Now, the thing about Wisconsin is I had a general sense that this cycle Wisconsin would be more conservative than Pennsylvania. Though we are discussing rather close margins, the polling would not always imply it. Based on polls taken in Wisconsin, Harris right now seems to be up about 0.2. And a lot of that could be due to CNN plus 6 poll, or was that poll in Michigan? Uncertain about it. Still, I believe Wisconsin to be another state. Donald Trump winning would make me more confident than Michigan's outcome. Michigan, to me, is the one state you are currently teetering in. You have some Harris surveys here. There was a larger story going forward 2 or 3 months, outside of like the past 2 or 3 weeks, whereby Trump went ahead and then recently Harris has stepped in. But entering the fall, it was Michigan throughout the whole summer. Harris is leading all the surveys. She seems better there. Wisconsin is a very, very, very slight tilt to Harris that became a Trump-leaning point of view. Then Pennsylvania became the more Republican state. Given 19 electoral votes, Pennsylvania seems to be the easiest state for Trump to win. Also the most crucial one. Wisconsin would then be it. It would next be Michigan. Regarding Michigan, I also see it as a pure toss-up. I also have Donald Trump Michigan here. I'll say this, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rust Belt states split just because the margins are so thin, but I do believe Donald Trump will also take Michigan. Trump has been at 312 for 2 months now. It's not exactly, oh, I'm just married to the prediction. If I have him at 312, 312, 312, indeed, Trump's made some ground in Virginia. He is organizing a rally there. He has some ground undercover in New Hampshire. Individuals are discussing it right now. Those are the 2 states, maybe in Minnesota, but primarily those 2 states are what I'm looking at for maybe Trump to extend the arithmetic. Though I'm not going to do it. It was a little bit tempting to possibly give Kamala Harris Michigan and split the Rust Belt. In Michigan, it seems to be roughly 50-50, and Trump ultimately finishes winning Michigan. Jill Stein is going to provide some very minor assistance. Given what we observed in 2016, Trump very narrowly wins Michigan by 0.3. About 2 in 2020 he lost to Bai. It is most definitely more liberal than the other 2 Rust Belt states, though. However, I believe Donald Trump ultimately prevails in that state, maybe by 0.3 or 0.4. I would suppose Michigan and Nevada are the 2 closest states. You might even be referring to Michigan being closer than Nevada. Based on some of those early voting figures, Trump might win Nevada by around a point to a point and a half. Furthermore, some of the polls we have seen show Trump's up by 3 or 4. It's just difficult to get a sense of in this state. At this point, it is simply an independent state. Right now, though, you're looking at Arizona and Georgia. I have those 2 states under Trump by somewhat more margin than any other swing state. By roughly 3 to 3.5 points, I'm loving Arizona and Georgia. Based on present polling, some claim North Carolina could be simpler than Georgia and Arizona. And Trump lost Georgia. He won North Carolina. That involves a lot of elements. For Trump in a state like Georgia, the early voting results showing minority votes lagging behind are fantastic. Possibly by roughly a point and a half, Georgia seems to be a higher margin than North Carolina. And Arizona will be similarly as well. Then it boils down to a Pennsylvania, right? It makes no difference if you lose in Nevada. Even if you lose in Nevada, you win Pennsylvania if you acquire every Sunbelt state. That reduces to those 3 then. It is a Georgia, a Pennsylvania, a North Carolina. You win those 3. Else, not really important. Under worse circumstances, you lose all 3 Rust Belt states. You win with either of those states. You take a New Hampshire by a hair, a Virginia by a hair. You lose all the Rust Belt if you win New Hampshire. You're at 272. That is only as long as you win Nevada, though. Nevada thus begins to take great relevance. Should you find yourself losing all 3 of the Rust Belts, should you fail to take Nevada and lose the Rust Belts, you would have to take Virginia. This means that there is some different arithmetic involved. Furthermore, another state you might be observing is Maine at large. Maine at large has just very little polling, and Biden won by a fair margin. It is therefore difficult to forecast it towards Trump. Whatever, there is like a few straw polls. Simply said, right now I just cannot do it. Looking at all the polls, I would still have to say Harris somewhat wins it, but that could be 2 electoral votes Trump could choose off. Regarding Harris's math expansion, liberals mostly argued for Florida, I believe is the only state they truly argued for. Like that is the sole one. Like as Florida has always been observed entering the cycle as a Republican heavy lean, some liberals have speculated perhaps it could happen. Clearly, it isn't going to happen. They have, I believe, given it up. Liberals are beginning to say, listen, Harris could actually lose the popular vote, but win the Electoral College. Harris then wins with 270 by grabbing the 3 Rust Belts by like 0.2 or incredibly narrow margins. That seems rather unlikely to me. She cannot win the Electoral College while losing the popular vote, but that would be the situation should she win by shockingly close margins in the Rust Belts. 270 to 268. Either way, right now I would say Trump 312, winning the popular vote by around a half a point. Something about there. But guys, for this video that is going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election on November 5th.